All right. Welcome to the planning commission. We are going to get started. We start our meetings with public comment. We are going to have a hearing though on the bylaw changes. So if your comments are related to the hearings for the two bylaw changes, please hold those until we get to that portion of the meeting. Are there public comments not related to the bylaw changes? Right. First up is the minutes from last meeting. I saw there were some minor edits. Nothing too major. Oh my gosh, we can read this. It's amazing.
Oh, I didn't even notice at first.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was about to complain and I looked up and I realized.
21st.
You're not,
Oh, welcome.
you're not first floor.
You are here. Okay.
Yeah, I made some minor edit to something that I had said further down, just adding some detail, so it felt more in context. I think that was the only thing.
The only like wording edits that I saw. That weren't grammar.
And Jill just jumped in online.
Hi, Jill, welcome.
Jill.
Hi, everybody.
You just missed my immense joy at the clarity of this new screen, Jill. It's life-changing.
All right. I'll have to come in sometime and see it for myself.
All right. I'd accept a motion to accept the minutes.
I move to accept the minutes as amended. My second.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right.
And if Nikki, if you want to vote,
Oh.
we have fewer than 7. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah,
take the vote.
Give me come out sometimes.
Yeah, I think, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think he's planning on being here.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. Oh, Chapin's iPad just joined the waiting room.
Oh,
All right. Not Chapin, just his iPad.
All right. So let's open the public hearing for the Unified Development Bylaw,
Part 1.
Part 1.
Yeah, so this is a public hearing on amendments to the town plan bylaw. To do several things. First is ensure that the bylaws comply with changes made to Vermont statute chapter 117 under Act 47, also known as the Home Act. This was a change to state law that took place last summer. And we're responding by adjusting the residential densities, limiting the regulation of residential parking, providing the building height incentives for affordable housing developments, and adding a definition of a footprint lot. Part 2 is ensure that the Taft Corners form-based code complies with these Home Act changes in terms of density, building height, etc. Correct minor omissions and errors. And then part 2 of our hearing, we'll talk about the state of property, the regulating plan change. So a main change in this proposed bylaw amendment package is eliminating the term dwelling unit equivalent and simply using the term dwelling for calculating density. The past bylaw amendment that you guys did to adopt inclusionary zoning only uses the word dwelling. It doesn't use dwelling equivalent. So this change is mainly for density and the conventional growth management review process. As part of this amendment, the form-based code overlay district would become a zoning district. Parking, So state law says you can only do so much with parking requirements. So the minimum required parking standards change. There's a limit to 1 space per dwelling in the sewer service area. Or with 1.5 spaces where there's no public parking. So state law preempted residential density. The density now in the residential zoning district, village zoning district, and a very small part of the ARZD that is in the ag rural zoning district is now 5 dwellings per acre. Oh, it's on that one. I was like, what is going on? Okay. Thank you. Added a 40% density bonus for affordable housing developments incentive from the Home Act to all densities. And this deletes the previous density bonus in the RZD. Added the 1 floor for affordable housing developments incentives to all maximum building heights. Added reference that affordable housing needs to meet certain elements of Williston's inclusionary zoning requirements. So standards that affordable homes, they're incorporated into the project. Their affordability is how it's guaranteed with the legal documents, that kind of thing. So in terms of the zoning district map, we're removing reference to business park zoning district and establishing the Taft Corners form-based code zoning district. In the agricultural rural zoning district, amending it to allow multi-household dwellings with 4 or fewer dwellings in portions of the district that are within the sewer service area. So this is a couple homes up off of Mountain View Road, and then a couple homes along Route 2A where the park and ride and the state police barracks go in. The 98% of this zoning district is not within sewer service area. There's a couple areas in ag rural zoning that have town sewer. And then in order to comply with these Home Act provisions, the minimum lot size is also being adjusted. Chapter 32 is being eliminated and replaced with form-based code. There's a couple minor changes to our gateway and our mixed-use zoning districts. Again, also in places replacing reference to dwelling unit equivalent with just dwelling. In chapter 39, noting that the density is now 5 per acre. And then in chapter 46 definitions, removing that definition of dwelling unit equivalent, and removing the definition of focal point, and adding a definition of footprint. Focal point is used in 3 different ways in the bylaw. Each contains a different definition in the section where it is used. Part of that recent growth management inclusionary zoning from the fall, we did away with that focal point review as part of the scoring context. So it's an outdated term that through changes to adopt inclusionary zoning and reform growth management through adopting form-based code, it's not really used for anything anymore. And then add a definition of footprint lot. One thing to note with the making form-based code a zoning district, rather than an overlay district, we are keeping the standards the same for gas stations, that they're prohibited, and cannabis regulations in terms of retail sales, that kind of thing. That's all staying the same. When we first adopted form-based code back in 2022, an overlay district was a lot easier than trying to have to get into the nitty-gritty of the cannabis stuff. And now, we're able to do it in a way where we can create the zoning district, but keep those underlying goals the same for where cannabis retail is and is not allowed. And I'll pause there with public hearing part one on density, home act, form-based code.
Thank you very much. So I want to start with offering if there's any members of the public that have public comment on this section of our public hearing, again, looking at the home act, the density and height and form-based code changes.
So folks, if you're on Zoom, you can press the raise hand button or comment in the chat to let us know if you'd like to speak. Ooh, Peter and Nancy, I think you're muted if you're trying to comment.
There you go. We can hear you. Yep, perfect.
Okay, great. I'm sorry, I entered the wrong meeting code. So we're here now, and I'm not quite sure if we're yet talking about building heights or not, because we just dropped in.
No problem. We are. You're in the right section of the meeting.
Okay, great. So our input would be that we're very concerned, and a lot of people in Williston are very concerned about building heights at Taft's Corners. We have a history of a certain height, and we've built it out at that height. And I think everybody has pretty much, come to terms with that and is okay with it. And if we dramatically change that to 5 or 6 stories, even 5 stories is a big departure from the way things are built now. And I think that's going to make a very big change in the character and feel of Taft's Corners. So we would urge you to look very carefully at this. And our desired building height would be more in the 4-story range. And certainly with this change at the state level, moving from 5 stories to 6 stories, while it was unexpected, is a major impact. And we are counseling you to not allow that to happen under any circumstances going forward, and preferably work with a standard 4-story building height with the potential for an additional story if affordable housing is included.
Thank you so much for your comments.
Mhm.
And thank you for moving in this direction. I was really happy to see in the paper that that you were going to be considering lowering the building height. And to 4 stories and 5 with the affordable housing. So I was really pleased to see that. So thank you for moving in that direction. And we hope that it keeps going in that direction.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Joyce, do you have a comment on this section? She's rejoined a couple times.
Yeah, I don't know if she has any.
There we go. Joyce, if you can hear us, but you can't speak, you're welcome to put something into the chat for staff to review, and we can review those comments there. I'm sorry. And also, oh, sorry, go ahead, Chapin. We'll wait for.
Sure. I just wanted to say, in response partly to Peter and Nancy, in case anybody else isn't aware, that we did, in fact, in what we're reviewing tonight, we're lowering the height at the core district from 5 to 4 because the state inserted this ability to add an extra level. And that means that if somebody doesn't have affordable housing, their maximum height now is 4 instead of 5 in the core district. So in fact, it's moving more than just the occasional building that has affordable housing in it. But we as a planning commission didn't want to go any higher than we had with the 5 as sort of the maximum height in the core. And so I'm glad that we are coming closer to where your expectations are.
All right. Thank you, Chapin. Any other planning commission member questions or comments? Right. Did Joyce put anything in the chat?
Not yet. It looks like she might have dropped off.
Okay. Bummer. All right, well, we'll keep going, and if she rejoins, we can give her the option to comment later. All right, next, part two of our series here tonight.
Yeah, so part two, is changing the official map and corresponding with the official map, the form-based code regulating plan and street specification maps. In order to remove the proposed streets that are shown on the Vermont State University VTSU property. So there's a couple reasons for this change. One is for state law gives certain entities like municipalities, towns, colleges, education institutions, partial exemptions from zoning. So having the streets on the map are somewhat a moot point because they would be able to pretty much do whatever they wanted to with their campus as an institutional facility in terms of how they wanted to design buildings and place buildings. Removing them from the map recognizes that state exemption. It's also facilitating the Vermont State Universities with their planning processes. When we adopted form-based code and drew those lines on the map, we were talking with an entirely different set of administrators. They're trying to do planning around statewide, their campuses. So removing the map, the lines on the map facilitates their planning process as well for what's the future of these campuses in Vermont. If they were to come up with a development proposal, we could either work with them to amend them onto the map as part of another regulating plan amendment in the future. In a different scenario entirely, say this property was no longer to be owned by the state or by an educational institution, it was sold to private development, they absolutely would have to come to the planning commission and add streets to the regulating plan because their only development potential right now is on those existing road frontages to place buildings. So expect something to come back for the regulating plan in the future. Probably the medium term, whether it's the state colleges doing their proposal or responding to their proposal.
Thank you. All right, comments or questions on the changes to the official map in response to the state colleges? Planning commission? Right. We're gonna have to monkey with our agenda here a little bit. All right, so is our plan to pause the public hearing? Right?
Yep,
Is that the right term? Have the right technical term?
yep, so the recommendation is to pause the public hearing right now, shift to the town plan discussion. Matt is over at the select board, he's talking about another item for about an hour. And then 8 to 8:30, he's previewing the Home Act bylaw amendments to the select board, so. It gives the opportunity if more folks come in for public comment, we're still only about 20 minutes into our meeting time. Or if Matt comes back in time, we can incorporate anything he has to say before closing the public hearing.
And any feedback he hears there. All right, so we're gonna pause our public hearing. Peter and Nancy, you're, of course, please welcome to stay. We're gonna talk about the town plan. For a while, and then we'll wait to see if Matt can come back to close the public hearing, but we have received your comments, and again, we appreciate those. And so you're welcome to stay with us for this next piece. Or not. All right. So we
Maybe
talked a little
we'll-
bit about this at our last, oh, go ahead, Nancy.
Ooh, hold on, Nancy. You're muted.
Okay,
Okay,
that's
all
good.
right,
Okay,
cool, cool.
Oh, yeah. So we talked a little bit about this 1 or 2 meetings ago, can't remember. And staff came back with the proposal, folks were able to look at it around choosing teams so that we can do this efficiently and effectively over the next year. So hopefully we can divide these up in a way that meets most people's interests. I don't know if you wanna say anything about the structure, or your vision for the structure. How you came to the colored teams categories.
The colors were chosen randomly, even though Team Red does correspond with Taylor Swift album, it was totally random, I promise. So we. First, I want to announce that we know that Simon's not gonna be with us, for the entire town plan process. Simon, what's your last day?
March 1st.
March 1st, so that's why we have Simon and Andrew paired together, so we'll have 4 teams. And then we broke up topics mainly by people's various roles, so. Simon is the conservation planner, so we decided that that team would be kind of the conservation focus. Melinda's charging ahead on housing and energy plan. I'm kind of the catch-all with, village and historic stuff. And then, thinking about some of the areas that aren't covered in the other topic areas. And giving that the big topics around economic development, transportation, mobility. Land use is so broad and interspersed throughout the town plan that it didn't really make sense to put land use in any one team, but break it down further. So Matt would be thinking about district boundaries and vision. Melinda thinking about homes and responsible growth. I would be thinking about historic and design review. And then Simon and Andrew's team would be rural land use and subdivision design. And there's some other aspects of land use that aren't fully encapsulated here, but we'll kind of, tag team or punt ideas to where they need to go. We do have a lot of time in tonight's agenda, so if you wanted to, at the end of this meeting, pick teams, you're welcome to do so, or I could send out a survey tomorrow morning and then folks could kind of sign up for their top 2 preferences. It's up to you how you want to get divvied up. I also note that, other town boards and departments and regional agencies will be checking in with them as things go. So you guys are gonna be the primary leads on writing and drafting things, but we'll be plugging in with other departments and organizations. For example, earlier tonight, the Conservation Commission and the Historic Design Committee were meeting to talk about archaeology in a preliminary way. We discovered, the Williston Historical Society only comes up once in the entire town plan. So it's like, we'll be thinking about where are these parts of our community that need to be brought in when we're thinking about goals and policies. Which brings us to the idea matrix. So after lively public outreach during the fall, all of our in-person events, we have over 300 survey responses that North Star is working through. So you guys have been, and I know my brain as well, is just swirling with all kinds of ideas that fall on all ends of the spectrum. And it's like, how do I take all these things that are kind of overwhelming and then plug them into the right place? So the ideas matrix is how to take an idea, figure out where it goes in the town plan, and then how to frame it. Right now, the initial focus is gonna be on objectives and strategies and actions. And later on in the process, we'll write the more lofty goal statements and then that ultimate vision statement. So as your teams are working, if you have really good ideas for those, you can write them down, but we're not gonna be finessing them until the very end. So an example would be, your idea is conserve 30% of Williston's land area. And you would ask, okay, why do you want to conserve 30% of the land area? well, to protect wildlife habitat and passive outdoor recreation. So asking why and what brings you higher up on the chart. What are the goals? What's the broader context for doing this? And then the how do you conserve 30% of the town's land area? Okay, you have an environmental reserve fund and conservation prioritization. And how do you implement that? Actions like contributing funding to the ERF, managing and leveraging that funding, having a conservation priority list. So working down to the detail is asking the how and the what. And bringing us down to what's really lacking in our existing town plan is how do you take a big idea and implement it on the day-to-day? What policies and programming and funding are these little action steps that make something happen?
I would just, sorry, interrupt you. I just wanna also like really focus us, the kind of critical nature of making it this action oriented. And I love the example. I would even go more like when we're actually writing the action steps, contribute annually to the ERF. We do that right now. It's nowhere near enough for them to actually do anything. So like in that action step, like Emily's saying, we would go to the Conservation Commission, talk to them about what are their goals? What are they able to do? What would be the minimum amount that would be needed to accomplish the things that they are looking at doing, like, and then put that number in that action step so that it's not just contribute your pocket change, it's contribute this amount in order to do these things so that it is a little bit more like concrete.
Mhm. Exactly, and that's a really good point, Shayla. We have a prohibited word and it's consider. So taking things to strong action words of contributing and how much, and using other specific verbs like analyze, decide, report, build, maintain. We're gonna have a lot of goals in the town plan where we might not know, like, what is the right number for contributing to this fund? And then the priority would be to, well, research it and figure out what that number should be that goes into that fund, or figure out what it would take to build the path from Taft Corners to the village. So taking these ideas and getting right exactly what Shayla's saying, those detailed, number quantitative based metrics. And then what follows in this memo is just the existing town plan chapters. I think I tried to get most of them into our 4 groups. I probably missed a couple. And so we're definitely open to your feedback on, you know, if any topics should shift around or be added. Through our public engagement process, we were focused on 5 areas: homes and people, energy, environment, economy and jobs, public facilities, and then I knew it was transportation and mobility. And that was broken out in 5 topics in a more broad sense with the public, just to get people thinking and engaged. And it won't line up 100% exactly to the chapters, because the chapters will be, there's more of them and more topics than what we asked people about.
That's probably good, because these aren't truly standalone, right? I mean, there's a lot of sort of matrixing going on by there should be, by design.
I may have missed it, but did you say, are we gonna have those reports from the community engagement as we're doing these ideas? Cause it seems like, you know, a lot of stuff came out of that and.
Yeah, so the survey closed the other week. North Star's working on the report. I think late February or early March is when that report would be available. In the interim, what we could probably do is, Melinda had that super rough draft where it was like what people wrote in the red boxes. We could probably make that available to you guys, just to refresh your mind. And then when we get that public engagement report, you can start plugging into your drafts. What I'm gonna do this week is create SharePoint folders for you guys where you can start plugging in and typing and sharing ideas. Everything will be publicly viewable, so whether it's on our town website or williston2050.com. You guys will have edit access, will have view access. And then when that engagement report is published, we'll do another outreach campaign. Hey, come hear about, we heard you in the fall, here's the high points. And here's us starting to work towards the first draft of the town plan and do that greater call and promotion of it, in the early spring.
Cool, so it's a single report of both the in-person engagement and the survey. We'll
Yeah,
get it all at the same, okay.
get it all at the same time. Yep, they'll give us a high point and then we'll have all the raw data with it. Yeah,
Sweet, thank you.
It's great.
And we'll do like a, part of one of our meetings where we'll do like an overview. And that will be part of that, but Emily just talked about kind of the like. Come hear what you all said, come see what we're doing with what you said. Probably have to welcome more comments too, in that space somehow, to make sure people can really feel like they
Yeah.
got opportunity to contribute.
yeah, and that will also be a good, gut check as well. It's like, okay, what voices have we not heard? Where would we want to engage with a nonprofit or a community agency or another municipality, as we're plugging in on these specific goals and action items, for in the example of, build that multi-use path. Okay, maybe we want to connect with someone at V-Trans or CCRPC in our drafting process. And I see Chapin has his hand raised.
Yeah, Chapin.
Yeah, I was trying to sort of, those list of topics, some of them are current chapters and some of them are, I think, not quite current chapters. So I think they're like prompts. And we had talked about interleaving the thing about a sense of place and of belonging throughout. And in the terracotta section, there is social infrastructure and the arts. Is that where we would talk about that? Because this begs a question for me, which is, I felt like we were sort of going down the road of deciding what the chapters would be and then working from that perspective. And this is sort of a bunch of prompts based a lot on the old chapters and on new ideas. Is that right?
So I think, Chapin, what you're identifying is they ended up not dividing the teams up by chapter, but rather by staff lead. So we will not be working as a team on these, like, it's not gonna be 4 chapters that
Yeah.
these 4 teams work on. Is that your?
Yeah, so I guess I'd cross out the word chapters there and just say those are topics.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll change that to just say topics or themes, because you are right, and that's where we as staff are kind of spiraling out, it's like. We don't know what the chapters are gonna be, because we don't know how much we're gonna have to say about housing or conservation or, industrial land use. And I think it'd be good to work from the bottom of like, get all the action steps and the strategies that we've been talking about, and then figure out what chapters they go in. And Chapin's point about social infrastructure, that's gonna happen in each
Many
one of those,
places.
many
Yeah.
places, and figure that out, and then where there's overlap, then weave them together and, create chapters from the bottom up.
Does that make sense to folks?
This is totally random, but, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So this looks like it's kind of depending on 8 planning commission members. There's 2 per team, what is but there's only 7 of us.
We do have the alternate, so Nikki can be a,
So that's, okay, so that's 8 total. So
8 total, yeah.
okay, for some reason I was thinking of a 7, okay, with the alternate.
Yeah,
All right,
7
great,
voting members
excellent. Okay,
and-
that, I'm just not
Yeah.
up on my math, sorry.
All works because of your foresight, getting.
Yeah, well, that's so great that we have an alternate, and thank you, Mickey, I'm so glad you're here. I don't know why I was thinking that we were normally 6 people, and yeah.
All right, so,
Oh.
You're okay. So are there other questions or comments? It's not, it's on his computer. It's not a voting member.
It's my back.
All
There
over
we
the
go.
Morse code.
Oh, sorry, everyone.
Totally fine. Any other questions or comments? Because we have time, if people are comfortable doing it live, I mean, I'm comfortable starting to talk about what we're interested in. And just seeing, and if there's too much overlap, then we can do some sort of ranked survey with Emily to sort it out numerically, but folks are comfortable with that? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious, like, if we're all like, raise your hand if this one is your first choice, and this one, and this one, and this one, it's like, if it splits up evenly, perfectly, then it's easy, but if it's ranked, then we can move to rank. If it's like, there are 4 people who want to be on Team Red with Emily, then like, you know,
Yeah.
then we can rank, but it might just be easy as going through it.
Oh, we're getting really close. Yeah, it's a good one. All right, let's go from our newest member first. Do we want to do it by members or we could just do by topics? Who would be most interested in the green team? So again, that's district boundaries, economic development, transportation, facilities and services, and neighboring communities. Ellie and Connor.
Ellie and Connor, all right.
Oh, sold to the highest bidder. Yeah, great. All right, we'll go to blue. So this is land uses, homes and responsible growth, energy plan, climate resilience, education and childcare. All right, Jill. Nice. That's great. Okay. Oh, go ahead.
No, did you get a second person?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know.
Oh, Steve.
Did you do?
No, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Steve, you want to do then, let Steve.
I should explain, when we talked about this last time, I volunteered for things related to transportation and energy plan, and those are in 2 different sections.
You gotta make a choice, Champagne, you can have both.
I live in the village and I'm interested in the village master plan folding in, which is in another section. And of course, I do volunteering, which is in the last section. So I almost feel like I don't know where to volunteer, but I can generate ideas and fill out the grid of, for to give an idea and pass it on maybe.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, which is that this is not limiting, right? This is
Yeah.
like, we need you to focus your production work energy in this space, but it does not mean you don't get to comment or provide ideas to other teams. All right. Land use, this Team Red is historic design review, village master plan, town facilities and services, social infrastructure and the arts, cultural resource and archaeology, and heritage, historical and archaeological resources. Megan, Mickey, okay. No, there's more of us. No, Jill, okay, yeah, me and Chapin are yellow.
I'm actually fine with anything, so if anybody wants, like, honestly, I don't have strong preferences, so. Happy to swap or.
Nice, that was easy.
All right, that worked out well.
Chapin Team Blue will welcome any of your recommendations for energy stuff, so don't be shy.
Yeah.
I like the way it's, but like you proposed it, that, they are ideas, so that at the beginning in the ideating phase, if you do have an idea, you can send it over to, that team, and it doesn't immediately step into like, okay, codify all of it.
Right, yeah. And that's why having the team, so you can share with one person. We'll probably send out something a little bit more about open meeting law, but in general, no more than 3 planning commission members should be huddling up, in person or digitally. And then these documents that we'll share will be publicly viewable, so people can see what we're kind of working on. We won't formally announce them for a little while until there's, something worth viewing, but they will be publicly available. And then, yeah,
And we will be able to look at all of them.
yeah,
So again, like if you have ideas for other teams, you can see what they're doing.
Cross pollination.
Yeah.
yeah.
Is there the capacity in the SharePoint drive to add photos? Because sometimes, look, I'm thinking almost like we need the town plan Pinterest board or something like that. Because like so many times, you know, it's the visual, right? And it's like, oh yeah, I want that thing, whatever it is, you know, that style of biplane, or, you know, this kind of community center, or, you know, I want the heritage to be recognized in this way, you know, whatever it is. I think that the pictures, if there is a way for us to add them, we use SharePoint, and I think there is a way to add photos, and I just wondered if, you know, that would, if we could have a protocol for that, so that you can see not just a picture, but who added it and what they were thinking about, what they like about it, or maybe they don't like.
Right.
And that way we can have kind of a visual component. I think that may also be more interesting for the public also, so that they see, oh, you know, these are some photos that, or sketches or whatever, that are some of the topic, you know, related to the topics that are being discussed.
Right, yeah, so you could upload a file directly to the SharePoint folder, or you could drop it in, these will be Word documents, so you could drop an image in. I'm trying to think, maybe I could pre-create like a little template where you could create a vision board, where you could drop in a photo and say who uploaded it, what do you like or dislike about it, to have those kind of prompts in it. So I'll do something for our vision board photos.
Right.
So instructions for that should be clear to include the description of the photo in the description of the photo, whether it's a positive or negative and what it is about it.
Yeah,
And probably alt text, just to make things complicated.
yes,
There's folks with low vision or something. Or using a text reader.
Right. So only at 7:43.
we are still only at 7:43. This meeting
This
is
never happens.
Did you already approve the minutes?
What was that?
I was about 3 minutes late getting on. Did you already approve the minutes?
We did already approve the minutes.
Good. I liked them too.
Mickey voted. Okay. I am, because he's probably not, Matt's probably not even through the tip conversation.
Yeah,
You guys could watch the select board meeting.
we could watch the select board meeting and see how it's going.
A watch party.
I'm not sure. We do not have any more public members.
If you wanted, we could play a couple brainstorm matrices, like we could toss out an idea and run it through the what and the why.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Do it.
Would somebody be willing to walk over and just see the, I'm happy to do it. Where they are.
Yeah.
If they're still like.
Oh, well, you
Oh, I
can
can-
tune in on.
Oh,
the-
just
I've
do
got,
that, okay.
We could literally pull up the,
Yeah, I've got
Like if
the,
he's still like in like the intro of the TIF thing, I think we should.
looks like there
probably
are questions right now
On TIF.
until, yeah. I think. You see, I saw that they were doing the TIF, panel, yeah, it's still a TIF district panel and they're into questions right now. So,
Okay.
um,
All right, let's try doing one. Practice matrix. Or not practice, so the first one. No, we can do the. We all know we want that.
I mean, if we're like, we're very, this is going in town plan, like we can just
Confident, yeah.
Well, like, is this like a full, like, is this the level of detail that we would expect in this kind of matrix? Or would we expect, would we expect more detail as we're going through this, I guess?
That's a good question, and I think it's up to you guys. Some probably will be this level of detail, some will probably have a lot more information.
I think for this one, I would want, I mean, so this is. I think for things where we really want an outcome like this one, I think we should try to put like, update the scoping study by. Certain date. Allocate the town budget for preliminary design cost estimates by certain date. It's but that's my bias, I don't want, and I don't think we need to hold that. For every single thing, some stuff is gonna be harder, but I think for some of our top priorities, we should really try to nail down like
I mean,
dates and.
yeah, and the other thing is like that some town plans have is like, if this is like a short-term action, a medium-term or a long-term action, is like one way to sort of. Get at
Sort that.
You know, but you're right, that being more specific. Kind of, there's an accountability that goes with that.
Yeah.
As you were using the last town plan for like guiding steps, I feel like I remember you saying like there was a spreadsheet, you're keeping track of all the things that it said, like what types of action items were the most helpful and which ones weren't, like what types of things being specified would be helpful versus not also.
I mean, I don't know, speaking like for myself, the ones that were not helpful, like, were not as sort of based in the reality that, like, there's certain things the town has control over and certain things that we really don't. So it's not really helpful to include things in there that we don't have authority to do. And there was a lot in the town plan, in this town plan about, kind of the, I don't know, sort of land use implementation of the planning department, and which was helpful, I think, but very little in other areas, like more programmatic, strategic actions or, what am I trying to say? Or project related, implementation. It was leaned very heavily on land use. And I think that we were able to get a lot done, but I think broadening the scope of, actions and making them really based and really putting them through a test, like, can the town really do this? And is this realistic, before.
So are you saying though, like, for example, if we were to go and put in and say, oh, we want to have a library from here to Arlington,
Right.
That kind of stuff will be idealistic and it will be too much for the town? Is that how you're going to articulate it?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's probably a good example. I mean, I think that building a multi-use path from Taft Corners to Village is a realistic goal. It's sort of like on the, it sort of pushes the envelope a little bit, but it's a realistic goal and it's one the town should strive for. But I think other things, especially that involve neighboring jurisdictions, are more sort of lofty and, I mean, I don't know, in my opinion, it's like there's a fine balance between sort of aiming high and then, and including things that aren't really realistic.
Yeah, and the town plan is focused on an 8-year cycle, so fiscal year 25 to 2033. What are things that the town can realistically do in that 8-year time frame? So updating a scoping study by X year, getting a cost estimate, and maybe getting a cost estimate for a path in the capital budget within that horizon. And we can probably include like, what is a short time frame, medium time frame, and long-term time frame. So there might be some of these loftier, longer range goals, and it's like, it's a goal, but we're not gonna be able to accomplish anything or complete it within that 8-year horizon.
Which is fine, because I can carry over to the next town plan.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah.
but if it's truly a goal and it's truly important, then we better make some concrete steps in the direction of whatever that goal is,
Mhm.
right? I mean, like otherwise,
Yeah.
I think on the appendix. Like-
So we do sequential also though, like this case, right? If it is, there's 4 actions are sequential. Then we do the first one, then the second one is within like next 2 years, right? And then next 2 years and next 1 year, right? So that it becoming one lead to the next, right?
And when we can, I mean, I don't know, probably not everything will lend itself to
Yeah,
that, but the things that do, yeah. Chapin, sorry, Chapin, go ahead.
I worry about thinking about what can be done in an 8-year time frame, and what we have control of, because that limits us. And our job is to think about the long range vision for the town. And so I think for specific actions to recommend, that makes sense that those be on a like an 8-year time frame. But for what the objectives are, for example, to make the village more livable and walkable and have a sense of place that people belong to. The path from the Taft Corners to the village should go at least as far as the town hall and maybe all the way to the Federated Church. And I would like to see Williston Road in the village be a tree-lined street, and V-Trans won't let us put trees within a certain number of feet of the street. And so those are the path and the trees are 2 essential features that are not entirely in our control. And yet I think that we should have them as long range goals. I'd also like to see utilities put underground. And, that's something that South Burlington did on Dorset Street. If we're going to make a project of making the village more livable in the long run and enjoyable, having trees and not having utility wires all over the place, to me is a worthy long range goal. And we may want to put just what we can do in the short term in the actions, but I don't want to lose track of things that are outside of the scope of what we can currently do on our own.
I don't disagree with that, I just think that if we're not doing anything, Chapin, then I do question it. I think the things where it's like, we
Oh, yeah.
want, I think there needs to be demonstrated something toward it. I totally agree with you. I want everybody in Task Corners to be able to access most of the agriculturals by bike and foot. That's not realistic in the next 8 years, but I think like that what are the things that we're gonna do to get there,
Right.
So I don't wanna, I don't want us to not dream big. I just wanna make sure that if we have it in there, we are pushing for action that will move us toward whatever that goal is. And maybe with it, and I can't remember, it's related, Chapin, I'm sorry, but maybe with the tree line streets thing, it's about looking at
Yeah, it's about taking the street
taking
over.
over that section from the state,
Mhm.
yeah.
Why don't we, back to the original idea of having an example, why don't we like use either like have a tree lined 2A or Route 2, like, and then like, why don't we flush through that? Like,
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it sounds like a big lofty goal, but like, this is the idea, have a tree lined
Walkable.
walkable. Which one are the
Wilson
priorities?
Road.
Yeah,
Main
Williston
Street
Road.
in the historic village. So, and I like what Chapin said too, it's like that threshold of big picture, like objective and above is that big picture that goes beyond the 8 years and then the strategies and actions.
Or what we can do, yeah.
So it would be, study the cost of taking on a class 1 town highway.
That would get us permission to go ferry wires, no, not ferry wires, would have to be through,
Conduit or whatever.
Do let us do the tree line and the better sidewalk and crosswalks.
Right.
The
utility, there would be some sort of utility conversation, right, with the burying the lines.
What about the rebuild of Route 2, like, that's coming up soon, right? So, I mean, soon in these terms,
Yeah.
2029, and
I
I
talked
guess
to the,
one of my interests with that is can we slip a few priorities into this town plan? And then when it starts, when the rebuild actually is, you know, breaking ground, we can be like, hey, we need trees here, you know,
Yeah, so,
at least build us a bioswale or something that we can put trees into.
yeah, so there's like a whole like coordination piece with V-Trans around that, right,
Right.
rebuild.
Yeah.
And then there might be some specific actions under that, you know?
Yeah. But it's also a question of timing, like, do we really want to take over the class 1 highway before they rebuild it? Maybe you should wait for them to
Right.
rebuild it
Right, so,
and then take it over,
yeah.
because, you
Yeah.
know, we would never be able to afford.
so I've been thinking about this particular item a lot, and I interrupted the guys who were doing the surveying to find out what they were surveying for. And they're making a 3D map of all the underground things, not just within the right of way, but all the way back 75 feet from the center of the road. So they're reaching some of the buildings. And they said they're putting a particular emphasis on drainage. And they were uncertain what the end result was for, but it sounds like it's for the rebuild, which is probably in 2029. And my feeling is that if we are going to try to have a multi-use path through the village, that affects how you design the rebuild of the road, because you may want to shift it 5 feet one way to make room for the path on the other side or something. And so once you get into that, then, well, are you going to want to bury the power lines, all the utilities within the next 20 years? Well, how can we? And so all these pieces have to be thought through. And then there's a particular time that we would take over the street, since some of the goals we have are to take over the street. So it's complicated, but there are steps we can take today, and it's important we take them, because if we don't, then the opportunity is missed.
I think this also goes back to what you were saying, Mickey, about them being sequential. It's like, wait, we should actually study the cost afterwards, because like you said, Megan, if they're gonna put a bunch of money into redoing 2A anyways, like, we should let them and do what we
Yes.
can to like help influence, and then.
We should take it over after they rebuild it. However, we want them to rebuild it in a way that's not a problem for the other.
Yeah. Here are our specs, and then you go and do this work, and then we're gonna buy it from you later.
This is my day job. I love it when this happens. We want the
We
state
know
to do
how
it, but
fast
we
we
don't
can.
want.
Yeah, I think that was something that came up in that, thinking about class 1 and the corridors, like, so they'll rebuild it to their V-Trans spec, and then you're not doing anything with it for another really long time, so. Could they build it the way we want it?
Right.
Well,
And
and
we'll take
is
it
there a
over.
way to hook them? Is there a way to say, you really want us to take it over? We will, like, whatever, preliminarily agree to take it over after you rebuild it, if you do these 4 things.
Yeah.
I don't know how you get the select board to do that, but.
V-Trans to get the kind of street the town wants.
Well, are there other tools that can be used, like, I mean, like official map or something? Are there things that we could kind of dictate,
Well,
or is it not?
I bet they
Feasible.
supersede, I'm sure they're, right.
I mean,
State
again, V-Trans is a state entity, so it's, you know, it's partially exempt, mostly exempt from our zoning regulations and including official map.
Right.
So, I don't know, I mean, it's definitely challenging,
Well, so maybe one of the steps is figuring out how best to talk to V-Trans.
yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and does that include, you know, having a public meeting? Is there some way that we can get folks from the community to come and raise their voices too? So it's not just this esoteric, quirky little thing that the planning commission is paying attention to.
It seemed like one of the pieces of feedback they were looking for after they gave the presentation was, how could we make this more enticing? So if
Yeah,
that's
that's what I remember.
something they're looking
Yeah,
for.
I agree with you. I think it's
So-
like, that's the deal making part of it, is like, okay, like. We'll talk to you, but here's what you gotta do to get us there.
Yeah.
From my
Uh,
experience,
Go ahead.
with VTrans, on from Green Mountain Transit's perspective about transportation, they are delighted to partner with municipalities who have ideas that, the budget is often the tough point, but the creativity of ideas, sometimes those people feel lonely because they're doing things for the whole state and they are trying to stay within budget. And when they have somebody advocating, as we can with Green Mountain Transit, and say, here's what we're trying to do, here's what we want to do, can you help us, or can we help you? That they wind up being quite a good partner. Better than you would expect. They wind up, in fact, making recommendations to the legislature to allocate money for things that by ourselves, Green Mountain Transit couldn't advocate for.
And it's also important to kind of like try and reach the right people at V-Trans, and I'm not exactly sure who that is, but I mean, you
We
can
know
talk
who
to
it's
one
not.
person.
item, find out.
Yeah.
if they will.
You can talk to one person and get nowhere, and then, you talk to somebody else and they might actually listen and want to work with you, so I don't know.
And on the whole, they are moving more towards the goals that we have, in that the idea of more pedestrian friendly, more multi-use activity, and more energy efficiency in public transit are all things that they are pushing for because the legislature is telling them to. So we actually are converging a little bit rather than going in opposite directions.
I mean, there are a lot of former planners who are, who work for V-Trans now, so seeking those people out and probably help.
Will it be also we are overthinking too much, because since they are gonna do that, not just for us, right, for the whole state, they will have some level of standards and, best known methods and whatever that will be already complying what we wanted to do. Right, in a way that the road is paid, or the way the structures, or, whatsoever.
Yeah, and another action item is to work with neighboring towns and the CCRPC on the other towns around our area have taken over streets like Essex Junction has and so forth, and look at their experience and use it as a model. And if we say to V-Trans, hey, we want to do what they did in this section of Pearl Street and Essex Junction, it's a much clearer thing to them that we're asking for.
Or along those lines, if neighboring towns who are also part of the Route 2 rebuild are interested in something similar, if there can be a unified like desire from neighboring towns in something like this, then that could also be a benefit.
Right, to Mickey's point, I think, V-Trans's priority in design is moving cars and not necessarily people or bike infrastructure. It gets lip service, but doesn't get the root of their funding. So recognizing that as a municipality, we don't have much control over that. That's, at the state legislature level, and like working with regional planning commission and neighboring communities to, push for better bike ped funding at the state
honestly,
level.
It is changing. Ride Vermont, is that what it's called? Where they've created bulletin boards for people to do ride share, and they are V-Trans. Go Vermont. That's a V-Trans initiative that's around alternative forms of transportation.
Right, and Dan Courier, who used to work for Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission, is the one of the managers at Go Vermont, one of the directors, so.
And Dan's the person that right now Green Mountain Transit is working with most directly, and he's wonderful.
Yeah.
So one question I have for us when we're doing this, like, I think obviously this would take staff time to do these action items we've identified. It would take staff time. It might take a little bit of money to do some of the engagement or what have you. None of it's a huge cost. But a big, when I heard, trying to remember back to the presentation around whether the town should take over the Class 1 town highway, I did not hear a warm fuzzy welcome at the select board for that. Because of, you know, the cost and the this and the that of actually maintaining that stretch of road. And so I don't have an answer. This is a real question. Like, what are we, when we're looking at this, if this is a truly a priority for us, if we're gonna study the cost of taking on the Class 1 town highway, right? Is there some other action step there? And is it engaging the community? Is it getting feedback? Is there some other piece there so that when that cost comes back, right? I mean, where do we need to engage, you know, our town department that's in charge of this, the community that would be impacted by it, have some sort of additional feedback so that it's not just a price tag, but a price tag with the, you know, input of the town and the people of the town and also the department. That would be become responsible.
Right, and like the pros and cons. So like it would cost more, but you would have enhanced bike ped connectivity in your historic village or in your task corners.
And if you can get people, oh, go ahead, Chapin. I guess I saw your hand raised.
Like, our select board is particularly sensitive to costs and to safety. And it would make it safer. And if we plan it right so that we do it in conjunction with the state supporting the rebuild, and so we then take over a road for maintenance that doesn't need a lot of maintenance. And of course, they pay us by the mile for roads that we maintain. So we do get something back. But I think we'd have to make a strong case, the select board, but I would hate to start with the idea that, oh, the select board might not want to spend money, so let's not look at this. To me, we need to look at it the other way around.
I think the town plan is like the place to kind of push the envelope around spending money for making, you know, the town a more livable place.
Totally. No, and Chapin, I agree with you. I just think we need to really remember, like, target our efforts to know, you know, if this is something that we then want to do based on this input, have enough with us going into our elected official, you know, space to be able to truly, you know, make a difference given what we know already.
And we have a good analogy happening right now where a group of people is talking to the select board about TIF funding, in that we could have a group of area towns who have taken over pieces of state highways come and talk to our select board about how it's gone and what their costs are.
This could be the question that we whoever will stand for next round of select board election. Are you going to support such thing?
And I mean, additionally, even with like the people, it's like Chapin, like you said, like people who've like taken over state highways, I think we also have this other example of people going to talk to the select board in the Glazer specific plan, like everyone from the farm showed up and was like, we really support this thing, and so, you know, like, it's obviously a really rare, kind of like a really rare thing to have something so beloved, but like, something like this, we're like, hey, you could walk in your village, like, wouldn't that be great? It has like the community engagement aspect of it too, that could be leveraged in something like this.
Yeah, I just think not that we can foresee all of it, and definitely Chapin, not that it should become a barrier, but like when we foresee, hey, this is gonna get, you know, this is gonna hit friction here, or like, if this is truly a goal, we have to address the fact that whatever this group of people is going to have an opinion or be engaged, like make sure we put in that part about pulling in their feedback to make so that it's not just, you know,
The same ways to socialize with them. Yeah, got it.
What's another example?
If no one else has one, I can give more, but I think I should step back.
I'm trying to think of one about housing, but all I can think of is the goals, which I'm not supposed to say, so I'm trying to like.
One thing I'm curious about, it's more of a question, is, the sort of green space, open space, parks in particularly Penny Crossing and surrounding areas, but kind of more Taft Corners broadly. I know that we obviously have the form-based code has green space allocated and so forth, but I don't have a sense of like, what's the inventory now? What does it look like now? What are what would be the ideal? Like how could, particularly because there are areas that have not been redeveloped in Taft Corners. I guess I'm a little concerned, sorry, I'm kind of coming full circle to this. This comes from my concern about the fact that in Penny Crossing in particular, there were initially parks that were planned that disappeared along the way, and now there's a giant hotel going in what I thought was going to be a green space. And so, so I guess my question is, okay, like, what is the actual inventory? How does that line up with what, you know, had been, you know, approved by the town? And how can we make sure that we don't lose out on green spaces in the future and pocket parks and, you know, tree-lined walkways and all those kinds of things in Taft Corners? Because I think that area in particular really, you know, especially with the density of housing, that area really needs strong
Is there
public
any? There's that
spaces,
one
strong
space.
green.
I mean, there's a one green. But that's privately owned.
Right,
It's public access, but it's privately owned.
Yeah.
There's one that I know. of.
Maple tree green.
Yeah.
yeah.
So what if the
That's it.
example was have a park in Taft's Corners, like, or like put some specifications around it, like a park that has like, that
Right.
attracts families, or like whatever the
Right,
specific
which we
is.
have we have quite a bit of that in the form-based code.
Right.
What my interest is in making sure that those actually happen.
So there is the official map that has those, and that's one way the town can, you know, monitor and maintain those spaces. I mean, you know, as we've seen, there will be amendments to the official map, but it is a way for the town to have some sort of check on the diminishment of those spaces. You know,
Okay.
as you'll recall with Trader Lane Green, you know, you approved the changes to the location as long as the green didn't get any smaller.
Right.
So continuing to kind of be that, you know, kind of, you know, keep your eye on the official map and any like proposed changes to it and, you know, kind of.
Okay. So that, I guess maybe this is the answer to my question, which is, if we had had an official map in the,
I did a
You
deep
know-
dive on the Penny Crossing one, let me tell you.
wow, okay.
The shrinking green.
Yeah, okay, interesting.
Yeah, so it's early, and this was part of the reason why I put the fire under our butts on form-based code.
Uh-huh.
You know, the early iterations showed a larger, about 1.5 acre center green, so you'd come in off Holland Lane. And it would tee off at a park. And then when the first hotel got built, they shifted, in order to accommodate that hotel, they shifted where the streets would go. It got smaller from 1.5 acres to what is today about 1/3 of an acre. And so official map gives us more regulation about wanting to have, you know, a planned public green. with existing places like Finney Crossing, you know, it showed that there would be a play area and it's just open field and, you know, it's a completed neighborhood at this point, so how can we work with owners associations about using mowed lawn as habitat area or creating more pocket parks, you know, within existing places? We have a lot of open space. How can it be enhanced to be better habitat and also more visually pleasing places to be? And then, yeah, leveraging official map and any future rec impact fees on, where do we want to prioritize? And the current town plan and bylaws say that public space should be private, that we don't want to own and maintain park space, that it should be private associations, and that feels like a really big policy shift for the town. We don't want to put it off on the private developer. We want to have public spaces that are for everybody.
And that's an important equity issue too. Yeah, thank you for this. Sorry, I was a little kind of scattered in my original thoughts, but I don't want this to happen again. I'm really glad that the official map is there. I don't know if we need any further actions in the next town plan, but I really like the idea of the town embracing those public spaces rather than trying to privatize them just so they don't have to deal with the maintenance.
And I think that's also an important thing, just, because the current town plan says something about how the town should encourage private developers to, you know, create and maintain green spaces. And so we might want to do the opposite, actually.
Yeah.
Too.
Chief, Ben, do you still have a hand up?
No, I put it up for wanting to jump onto Megan's suggestion. I think that's a good suggestion. And I have some other actions I would suggest adding to the list for having better green space. And just a technicality, but I think it's the regulating plan that reserves those green spaces in the Taft Corners form-based code area. Although the regulating plan and the underlying official map are in agreement. But I think it's the regulating plan that it gives us the power to say those have to be green spaces. Is that right? Melinda or Emily?
Both the official map and the regulating plan. They roll that.
So I don't feel as though there's enough green space in much of the Taft Corners form-based code area. It's good in the southeast corner with Borough Hill, and but it's overall, to me, we need more green space than we have. And one of the ways we could get it is through the shared stormwater facilities. Typically, we ask each developer to do their own stormwater for whatever their projects are. But I think we're aware that with the density we're asking for it at Taft Corners form-based code area, we really, it would be much better to have some municipal stormwater facilities shared by multiple lots. And like what South Burlington did on Market Street, where they put in municipal stormwater facility with a winding pedestrian path and sculptures and artwork and benches, it could be made into an additional green space. So I would put an action item of work on achieving some municipal designs for stormwater. And there's, to me, this also is part of trying to further the Taft Corners planning. I think we need to make a push to get municipal stormwater because we have such a history of having it be individual developers that it sort of feels weird to the town. But at that density, I think it's essential. And then a second one I would add, I was disappointed when the extension to Finney Crossing went in. I'm blanking on the name of
The annex.
The annex, because I was hoping that was going to be more baseball fields and more community gardens, and that was a place to have some of the green space to go with the development that doesn't have much green space between Route 2 and that. But they did give land to the town for green space, and it's on the other side of the brook. Finney Crossing did. And so I would put as an item there, I agree with you about, Megan, about inventorying what we have and what's available and what we want. It's just the way the Conservation Commission is prioritizing properties for preservation for conservation because of wildlife corridors and so forth. I think inventorying and so forth is good, but that particular several acres, it's adjacent to how the development that's off of Mountain View.
I think that inventory was completed and I was just looking at it like last week. Of like all of the town owned land, there was a nice website and like notices of all the trails. Melinda, I think her name was on it.
I think that's preserved town land.
Okay,
But this is land that could be a park that's on the other side of Allen Brook, Brennan Woods. It's adjacent to Brennan Woods on the other side of Allen Brook from Finney Crossing. And I don't think, I certainly haven't looked at that as a potential place for open space to be developed because we need more around the Taft Corner area, and especially in that north quadrant of Taft Corners, we have so little. It's actually on the map right there, right now, right smack in the middle.
Yeah, so it's this forested area. It's somewhat landlocked, north of the Allenbrook. And Chapin, your point reminds me that a few years ago, or recently, the rec department did the Allenbrook Park Master Plan, so enhancing more rec fields at Allenbrook Community Park.
I'm aware of, yeah.
So letting that not be another master plan that then never gets
Never happened.
built.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe that's, I mean, can we comment on that in the?
Yeah,
town plan?
definitely. I mean-
Like, build the something, whatever the name of that is. Revised, Allenbrook.
Yeah, this is places where the current town plan really lacks. When it looks at implementation, it just lists you guys, the DRB, the conservation and the design committee, and it's like, there's so many more, like rec and parks has a lot to do with the community and the park programming, and even public works and the cemetery commission and public works and fire.
I mean,
like,
maybe
every
that should
time-
be a to-do in the beginning of each team is to look at the big master plans. I mean, in some ways, like the path is the village, Tuck Farms path is a great example of that. Like, it was a scoping study. Scoping study happened and then nothing happened with it. Like this Allenbrook master plan, like all of these things that have been.
Right, what's on the shelf gathering?
Yeah,
dust
what
that
is
we could
gathering dust
actually
that's
just
still,
reuse?
yeah, that's just do.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Do the thing.
Do the thing
Do
that
the
somebody,
things.
yeah, already
Yeah.
thought of.
I was not aware that was being shelved. I knew we moved a little bit slowly during COVID, but I believe that Parks and Rec is planning to move ahead with that.
Right, so, using the town plan to keep bolstering that.
Right.
And the it's talking about is landlocked, but it's not landlocked from Finney Crossing in the annex if there were a footbridge going over the brook.
I did finally think of something for housing that could be more concrete. And that's we talked a lot about in inclusionary zoning that it doesn't reach the very low income or the sort of some of the folks that we've talked to from the disability community who are gonna be on vouchers. And so I think using that housing fund and the new housing the committee to identify and partner with the nonprofit housing authority to begin planning on a project for very low income housing. So that we don't just let that kind of.
Agreed, especially because that was one that really bubbled up from the community.
It really bubbled, yeah, definitely the disability community has been very clear about it. And we did not address very low income with our inclusionary zoning.
Right. And especially in the model of supportive housing that would
Yes.
be required for that population.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, supportive housing model.
And hopefully with the housing committee, we can get more specific than begin work on the project, but I'm sure there's some technical terms there that we can
Yeah,
throw in.
definitely, yeah.
But that's one that I think I didn't want to lose from the work we started. Right, any word from that? Anybody looking at that?
Are you still talking about designing stuff?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Other examples?
I guess I'm just really curious to see the report and see what kinds of things our community, is thinking about and wishes for. I mean, there are the standard ones that we know that we've heard for years and years, like the paths, the
community
tap
center has
corners,
to
the
be on here
community
somewhere.
center, possibly a dog park, or, that one always is very contentious, but, and then, things like the Allen Brook Park redo. But I'm wondering about things that maybe haven't bubbled up that much yet, and, I was only there one night, so I don't, maybe there are amazing things happened on the next night that I didn't go to. And I feel like those, like, our ability to translate some of the public materials into this format is gonna be really important. And I think that's also where it would be helpful if we were very clear about, like, this came from the community participation piece, and here's what we think we would need to get it rolling. And yeah, I mean, I guess I can sit around and dream of my ideal Williston, but it's not necessarily like everybody's, right?
But that did just also make me think of something, which is we should do that, and also the disability housing one, like, we should draw on this our last year and a half or 2 years of community engagement, like, we've had so much, not just for the plan.
Right.
And people, when they engage with us, expect that to stick, don't expect to have to then come back 8 times, so we should also kind of try to reach back. I don't know if there's a way to do that, Emily, that's not super time intensive from like any other topics or issues that we've worked on that have been. And maybe that's also hearing from our committees, like hearing from the conservation committee, hearing from the energy committee, the housing committee, those guys, to make sure that we're catching what they're hearing too.
Yeah, that's really a good point.
And we'll have a place in our town plan, so we're looking at other examples, and I can't find it right now to pull up the rubric, but it's like, what did we hear? So we'll have like a couple quotes or like the high themes. So when you open up a chapter, here's what people said that relates to this theme. And then thinking through like graphic design, how menus have like the vegan or gluten-free circle, like doing that for the required element, or this action item is like really important, is like, these things are marked with this symbol because it means it's our most important for achieving equity or resiliency. That kind of thing.
Yeah, I like that.
Doing it like really quick visual ways, and that would all happen, I think, like at the very end, like we've done all our actions and strategies, we have our chapters, and it's like, okay, we're putting sticky dots by these key things.
I would say, yes, the visual goes at the end, but I also would really love through this process that and I think you've already embedded it, which I really appreciate. That particularly the equity piece is really embedded in all of these conversations. And I think it's relevant for many of them. And the resilience and Was it resilience and livability? Those are the other two, resilient, and livable and
Equitable, yes.
Right, so, you know, I mean, there's different. And maybe this is something that each team needs to kind of work through, is like, okay, what does resilience mean in the context of these particular, you know, whatever the team is handling? What would that look like? And I guess when I think of resilience, I'm specifically thinking of, you know, climate change challenges. And, you know, we're lucky in Williston not to have a lot of because we've prohibited development in floodplain. So we're somewhat insulated from some of that, but there are other climate impacts that, like heat, that we want to deal with, and something like street trees is a great way to, you know, to think through that. So resilience, you know, I think has a lot of different components to it, but the equity piece, I hope that is really upfront and really deeply embedded in each of the teams' kind of conversations.
Yeah, definitely, like thinking about that cost analysis, of taking over a class town and highway, it's like, yes, maybe it costs money, but it provides people with mobility issues, a safer way to get around town, and it's like the majority of our budget is public safety, and a lot of their time is spent answering calls to elderly who have fallen or had issues, so it's like, that's really important for equity that we have those services available. Thinking about equity as an aging population, people with disabilities, when you design for them, you're designing for everybody. This was the document that I was looking for, so we'll have your SharePoints will have that matrix framework, and then we'll be plugging in for each, it says chapter title, it'll be theme, and we can expand as needed. But thinking about those action items, those strategies, actions would be in a priority order. And then when we hear from our engagement report, then we can plug in, okay, what is a really good quote or topic or theme that we've heard that would plug into this topic area?
Well, where's this document living right now? Do we have?
It's not yet, it'll be in the SharePoint folders.
Great, yeah, that's super helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, we were looking, the York, Maine comprehensive plan, and there have been so many good examples that you guys provided where style wise, whatever we do is gonna be a lot better than our current town plan. It'll load.
Just have lots of pictures.
So they have all of their topics or goals, they have 20 goals. And then when they get into their topic areas, go over what they did for community engagement. So they have goals, strategies, there's 8 topic areas. They relist those 20 goals a lot. So here's an example, okay, history and archaeology. Current conditions highlight a couple of those high points, and the appendix is more information than you ever want to know. A sample of what the community said, another photo, and then they have strategies. And then the A's and B's are like action items, but I think what we're talking about is a little graphically it can look like this, but is more fine grained about, okay, what's the time frame? Do we know a cost? Do we need to figure out a cost? What does the cost mean in terms of equity, livability, resilience?
It's interesting, they have that little visual to mean that there's some other agency involved. That's what their little, like, cog wheels or something.
Yeah. Yeah, so we could borrow that. So natural resources, current conditions. What the community said, and then they go into strategies.
Yeah.
That's still going. So I think it's up to you guys.
Yeah, I don't wanna just keep people and think that was a good discussion, and at least now we all have a sort of shared understanding of what we're gonna go for there in our smaller teams. I think given, go back to Matt, just that room is very full, is it?
It's just Shirley.
Okay, so I think we'll, my thought is that unless folks really wanna stay, we should, adjourn, close the public meeting, and then wait for additional feedback from that if we get it. We can just discuss it at our next meeting, in terms of what he had heard from that.
Or, I mean, we didn't take much public testimony if you wanted to close the public hearing and transmit it onto the select board. Otherwise, the hearing would be continued.
Looks like Matt might be talking about timeline right at this moment. Is that something about pushing off the decision? There might be a little sense of urgency about these bylaws.
Yeah, so I think,
No, I would wanna close, sorry, I would wanna close
Okay.
the public hearing
okay,
tonight.
yeah, that sounds good.
Either way, but we could close it now. And just hear what Matt, hear from Matt later.
What you really want is to suspend the public hearing?
No, Chapin, I think we wanna close it so that we can move forward.
Okay, I thought we didn't receive input on couples parts of it. Did we receive input on everything?
I mean, there was only, Pete and Nancy online. We didn't have anybody else in the room.
Right. Okay,
For folks, what would, if anybody objects, that we can.
No, I think it's.
That's fine, and no one else came, and we are all, on board with these things, because we put them forward to the public hearing in the first place,
So
so.
Linda's over there now, so if it sounded like things were going where the select board wanted to change, maybe she would have phoned over.
Mhm. Okay.
Oh, so she's there, she's there.
Yeah, 'cause she's going there for a different item. After that.
Okay. All right. So I would, move to close the public hearing on the bylaw
So moved.
amendments. Thank you. Got a second?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
This was a really good meeting.
I put you on the spot there. All right, and thank you. Yeah, I think it was really interesting to talk through the format for how we're gonna move this. It's gonna be a lot of work. Just looking at that other town plan meeting file. Whew, okay, got a lot of work ahead of us. All right, and we will see everybody. 2 weeks?
Are you gonna vote on the bylaw amendments at the next?
Oh,
hearing,
sorry.
or- Okay.
That's fine. Close the public hearing. Hold on. Do you have me a statement somewhere? Do you need a specific motion with words, Emily? Specific words? I can't find it in the.
I don't know if specific words were provided.
I don't remember
I
seeing.
don't remember seeing it. I think we can just say. In a motion to
We didn't change anything.
vote to move the
Right.
bylaw amendment to the select board.
So moved.
Lovely. Do I have a second for that? Okay, Lana, a second for that. All those in favor, please say aye.
I,
Okay, opposed? All right, passed. Let's go on to the select board officially.
Alrighty.
Okay.
We end early.
All right.
Really, thank you all very much, and it was a really good conversation.
Thank you. Thanks, Shayla, for.
Yeah.
So.